Are you a kids yoga teacher who is looking to promote creativity in your kids yoga classes? If so, this is the video for you. I'm Julia Hankins and I'm a kids yoga teacher. I also train and mentor other kids yoga teachers to help them feel more confident so that they can share their unique gifts with the world through teaching kids yoga or mindfulness. And so today I'm going to be talking all about how we promote creativity in our kids yoga classes. So quite often children tell me that the thing that they love most about my classes is being able to create things and being able to be independent and just generate their own ideas. And so in all of my classes there is some sort of element of creativity, and in fact I usually weave creative themes throughout my class plan. And so you may be wondering, why is it important to include creativity in your kids yoga classes? So it could be that your usual practice is to demonstrate things and children to copy, or to lead them through a certain thing, or to instruct and guide. And that can definitely be part of a kids yoga class. But I personally feel that when we incorporate creativity within the class and give the children more ownership, then that really up levels the effectiveness of the class and also the enjoyment for the children. So being creative has its own benefits. It helps children to problem solve, to think critically, and perhaps build social skills if the creativity is to do with working with other children. It also gives children a sense of autonomy, which is so important and one of our three basic drivers as humans. So what does creativity look like in a kids yoga class? I actually used to think that I wasn't creative. I used to think that because I'm not very good at drawing, that I'm not creative. But actually I've since realised, and I'm sure if you're watching this you probably already know, it took me a while to figure it out, that being creative isn't about how artistic you are. It's the ability to generate and create something new, to imagine something original into existence. And so we could be doing this all the time in our classes, and I would recommend that you do. So there's lots of different ways that you could do this. Children are naturally creative, and oftentimes all we need to do is to facilitate that and give space and freedom to enable it to happen naturally in our classes. So this could just gradually happen throughout your lesson. So for example, in your warm-up you might play some music and ask the children how their body wants to move to the music, and children will naturally know that, but they're creating, they're making their own. You're not guiding them. I mean, you may guide them, but then giving them the freedom to express. So for example, in a warm-up game I may guide quite a lot of it to get them warmed up, and then I may have sections, perhaps the chorus or something like that, where I'm like, okay, dance party, do what you want to do, or what does your body feel like today? So that can be a really great way of getting the children to have ownership of what they're doing. You could also in the warm-up take it in turns, take the children take it in turns to lead the class, so leading other people or leading their partner. You could also have them showing a movement, particular movement. So you could say, show me a movement that helps you stretch your arms, or show me a movement that helps you stretch your legs, or show me something that makes you feel strong. And so you're giving an instruction, but they are creating with it whatever it is that comes to them naturally. You could have a prop with you and you could say, show me a way that you could use this prop. For example, a scarf, a beanbag, a soft toy, and then you could give them like a reason. So how could you use this soft toy to support you to balance? How could you use this soft toy to support you to feel strong? How could you use this soft toy to promote flexibility? How could you use it to relax? Could you use it to strengthen our arm muscles? You know, there's lots of different options there and lots of ways that you could do that in your warm-up. When you're going into like breathing practices in your class, you could ask the children to create their own breathing pattern or their own breathing technique to represent something specific. So say, for example, what would falling leaf breath look like? And the children may create their own breath based on the theme of a falling leaf. You could show them a breathing exercise and ask them to give you a name for the breathing exercise. It could be, what would you call this breathing exercise? What do you think is a good name for it? You could show them a breathing exercise and ask them to adapt it or change it to make it feel different in their body. Or you could give them a prop and ask them to create a breathing exercise using that prop. So it's all like really simple little things to incorporate a greater scope of creativity within your classes. And then when you come into like the main part of the lesson, so this would be the part where I would be teaching, or we would be reminding ourselves of some poses. We may be creating something, maybe playing some games. In this section, I might say things like, can you turn this pose into a partner pose? How can you add movement to this particular pose? So I might show them a particular pose and get them to create and evolve and shape that pose to make it different. And then I might say things like, well, what pose would you put before this pose? What pose would you put after this pose? And can you create a new pose by combining different ones? Can you create a flow of poses to tell an autumn story, for example? What would you call this pose? So you might show them a pose and ask them then what they would call it. You could get them to use a prop and ask them to use the prop in some way to support a particular theme. So we've talked about why be creative, and we've also talked about simple ways that you might weave it within your lesson. And I'm now going to talk a little bit about tips that you can use to support creativity within your classes. And so my previous life was as a primary school teacher. I was actually a school leader for 5 years, and I've been a teacher for a really long amount of time. Quite often I use that knowledge to inform what it is that I deliver. And so a term that I really like is scaffolding. And what scaffolding is, it's an educational term that refers to giving children support to help them to achieve. And so it's not likely that a teacher would say, okay, write a story, and then just give the children a blank page and no previous support in doing that. That's just not going to happen. The teacher might provide lots of different scaffolding to support the child to do the best that they can. So that might look like, in an English lesson, for example, giving lots of previous experience of stories, creating a plan together and letting them have that plan with them, having access to that plan and their ideas, providing language banks that they may have created together, images to support them for their ideas. So, for example, images of characters, things like that. So good education consists of providing children with enough support to enable them to be successful. And in my opinion, it should be the same in our kids' yoga lessons. They shouldn't be any different. And whether this is lessons within the school day or lessons in an after-school club or a community class, we really want to promote learning, don't we? That's what we're here to do. And we want to promote learning in our kids' yoga classes. And so, for example, in my kids' yoga classes, the support that I offer looks like a bank of age-appropriate poses and movements that the children learn. And it's really important to me that they know a bank of poses that's appropriate for their age group, because from that they can build confidence and a solid foundation to be creative from. So in my classes, I know, like, these are the 12 poses that we are focusing on. They may have other poses that they've learned before from a previous year group, for example, but these are what we're building on. And another thing that I do to support children to be creative in my classes is giving lots of experience using the poses and movements in different ways. So playing different games, practicing poses in lots of different contexts. So they're building that confidence. The thing that I would do is demonstrate examples of what I'm looking for. So, for example, if I ask them to create a flow, I would demonstrate an example of what that might look like, so they can see, okay, this is what it's this is what it is, a demonstration, something to hook onto that they already know, so they can see what it's like. Also have lots of visual reminders, and this is the key for me, having visual reminders. So it could be large postcards in the middle of the circle, for example, and I really like having A4 cards. So I have these around within the lesson, the middle of the circle, and all of the ones that we're using that particular lesson would be available for them. Then also I give them access to the cards to support them. You can see, for example, on this is an example of, I call these partner cards because we share them one between two in our classes, but they could be individual cards too. And so this, do you remember when I was talking about having a bank of poses that I focus on? So for example, this is my set 2, and so a group of children who already know set 1 will be working on set 2. These are the poses, and we've just seen there's crab and there's zebra. These large poses will be in the middle of the circle, and when the children are expected to create their own, the children themselves will have access to these poses, these cards here, so they can see, oh, okay, these are the poses that we know, these are the 12 poses we've been working on, and these are the poses that we're going to be using to be creative. So it's a basis, it's a foundation, it's something to build on, and it's a visual prop. So it's not me saying, right, we're going to do this, this and this. It's me saying, here's what you know, here is what you can do, what do you want to do with it, and building on that. And so these cards are really the key to the creativity that happens within my classes. They really support the learning. Another thing to consider in encouraging creativity is having boundaries and having limits. So when you give children some structure or some boundaries to work within, they often feel like they have freedom to explore because they know, it's like fixed. So they know that they can, okay, so say for example, we know these poses, we know them really well, we're feeling really confident, we've used them lots of weeks, we've used them in lots of different ways, and now I can be creative with them. So if you give them some sort of boundary, I can support that. So some examples might be create a flow using no less than 3 and no more than 5 poses. So they know the poses that they know really well, they're really confident with them. I've said to them, okay, don't use no less than 3 poses. So they know, okay, I've got to pick 3, but no more than 5 because we'll be here all day. They would some of them will flow through the whole set, won't they? So they're selecting them, but they've got freedom within it to be creative. And so you could also say, select poses from the one that I've given you. Or you could say these particular ones. So you're giving them, an even tighter boundary. Obviously, children who have been working with me for a long time may have a bigger bank. So, for example, by the time children have got to set 2, they've also got access to set 1 because they already know these ones too. When they're working in set 1, they've only got access to these poses, but by the time they get to set 2, they could be using these or these. So there's even a greater range for them. And it continues to set 3 and set 4 in the classes that I deliver. So that's my kind of bank and providing a foundation for them. Another way that I could create boundaries or set limits is by giving a particular theme. So it could be, for example, create a spring story. And I might demonstrate that by saying, okay, I'm going to be a seed, and now the seed has rain falling on it and it's growing a shoot. And now the sun is shining on it, the rain is falling on it, and it's growing some leaves. And then eventually it flowers. And so that could be my flow, using the poses, using a theme. So giving kind of boundaries and guides can support children to be creative. Another way is giving a time limit. So saying, for example, okay, you have 2 minutes, and in that time you're going to create a new pose to represent such and such. So those are just some examples. Oh, another thing that you could do is you could give poses that don't have names. These are so I'm just going to compare it here. So you may have already met that pose with its name, and then you might want to use a card without a name. And so if you don't have these cards, or you have your own cards that you'd like to use, you could just cover the name. For example, what other pose names could we give this? What could this pose represent? And you could do that, for example, in the story, in creating a little story. So what could this pose be in that story, and what could each pose represent? When I've got my cards here, great about them is they don't have the names on at all. And so they can represent different things. So, for example, it could be crab, or it could represent a bridge, or it could represent a table, or, you know, whatever. I think that's really important for creativity too, having, you know, no names, so that children can really use their imagination a lot more, because if the name is on there, it can be quite fixed as to what they imagine that pose is. So a little now about meeting individual needs. So although the vast majority of children are very natural at creating things and are all the time finding new avenues and new thoughts and ideas, some children can struggle to be creative and can need a little bit extra support. And so that's totally okay. And don't, you know, if you're teaching and somebody doesn't have any ideas, that's totally fine. But you could support them a little bit more, perhaps by working with those children specifically, maybe giving them a few options to choose from, maybe giving them the opportunity to copy your ideas, or working next to them and saying, oh, I'd like to do this. What do you think would feel good next to that? So kind of supporting their thinking. And then you could also do like partnering or grouping those children with children who are feeling more confident and who have lots of ideas. But I would only ever do that if all of the children in that dynamic were comfortable and happy with that. I might do things like give more ideas. So for example, if I'd ask the group to think of a flow with 4 poses, I may give 3 poses already to that child that is struggling, and ask them to think of just one to add on to the end or at the start. So over time, if your goal is to reduce the level of support, then you could reduce the level of support. I don't feel like there's any real need to do that in my classes, because I do think that the kids really love having access to things that they can hold, things that they can, you know, label and talk to and even write on. You know, they can even get their whiteboard pens and write on, or they can cover up with their post-it notes. So it's a really fun part of being creative within the lesson. So my goal is not to remove those supports. However, I have found that over time, with lots of practice, having things in place, children do naturally need those less. So if you found this little video useful, interesting, I think that you would really love the e-course that I have and resource bundle called Captivate with Cards. In that you get all of these resources and more. There's so many more. I'm going to include the link for you to find out more, because I'm not going to go on and explain what that is. But basically, it's an e-course with all of the resources I've included here and a lot more. And you get lifetime access to the training of how to use them in all of your classes. So whether that's curriculum classes within school or clubs, whether it's preschool, all of the, you know, all different groups, all of those kind of things. And so that's a really useful place to start. Also placed for you to get access to all of those lovely resources to use. Now for November, I'm really excited to be launching a really special offer. So because soon I'm going to be increasing the prices of my other trainings that are included in my school yoga teacher bundle, I've decided that for November I'm going to include this bundle absolutely free in with Captivate with Cards Training. So what this means is when you buy Captivate with Cards Training and resources, you also get lifetime access to 4 other e-courses and a document bundle. And so don't worry if you're thinking, oh my God, I just don't have time for all of that. That's just too much. When you purchase, you create an account and you have a dashboard. And so it's like your training dashboard. And so you can come back and revisit these e-courses whenever. So it may be that you're thinking, I just don't have time for that now. That's okay, because it will just be there waiting for you for whenever you need it, and you can come back to it when you do have time. So maybe if you have some off term or something later on in the year, or you know there's a time when you can come back to it, or you could just watch, because the videos are quite short, you could just watch a little one each week, for example. But all of the resources are there for you. So what's included is Props Like a Pro e-course. So in that, you learn how to use props effectively within all of your kids' yoga classes. So currently that's £35, approximately $45. That's soon going to increase to £47, which is approximately $60. There is Tame the Crowd Without Being Loud e-course, which is how to learn to work with large groups. So currently that's £35, soon to increase to £47. So the Tame the Crowd Without Being Loud is really good for supporting you to manage behaviour in a really positive way. There's also Structure for Success e-course, which is all about structuring your classes within the school day. So it's really useful for you if you want to teach more within school time. And then there's the Yoga Club for Schools e-course, which is learning how to plan and deliver fabulous and fun kids yoga clubs in schools. And so that's, again, currently £35, soon to increase to £47. And then there's the document bundle, which is a really brilliant bank of documents, basically all the documents that I have used in my own kids yoga business. So it's policies, planning grids, risk assessments, letters and contracts, all of that. And all we'll be doing to that is each time I get a request, I'm going to be adding to the bundle. So that's going to grow in its usefulness, really, because you will get access to all of the updates. And so you may be wondering why I'm increasing the prices on the other trainings, and that is because currently those trainings are just one long video. So it's you can access it, you can get it, you can watch it. It's just one long video, and some also like slides and things like that. But I'm going to be spending some time in making the videos in shorter modules and shorter lessons, and organizing it into a more easy to access e-course kind of way, similar to the way Captivate with Cards is, because Captivate with Cards is already has modules and lessons, so you can come back and return to different bits. But the other courses in my school yoga bundle aren't yet like that. So at the moment they're just £35, but when they are arranged like an e-course, their price is going to go up. So this isn't going to be repeated. I'm never going to do this bundle ever again. And so if you would like to get over £400 worth of comprehensive training for less than £200, then it's a really good time to make use of this offer. The offer's only going to be happening in November. So if you have any questions about this or anything else, just email me, julia@juliahankins.co.uk. And I hope you found that training, video, whatever it was, really interesting and useful. And I'd love to hear how you incorporate creativity within your kids' yoga lessons. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and sign up to my mailing list.